Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the fascinating research behind a hidden workplace crisis that you might have experienced firsthand. We're going to look at exactly why the hardest working, most reliable employees in an organization often end up getting left behind when it comes to recognition and career growth, and more importantly, what we can actually do to fix it. If you've ever felt like your daily grind goes completely unnoticed while someone else gets promoted just for taking a class, well, you're going to want to pay close attention to this one.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the workplace fairness problem, the development opportunity paradox, the psychology of fairness, the cost of broken trust, and finally, balancing the scales.
Section 1. The workplace fairness problem. Operations versus modernization. Picture a developing organization. They're usually in a constant tug of war, right? They desperately need to modernize, but they also literally have to keep the lights on every single day. So you end up with two types of employees. Meet the operator. This is the person carrying the heavy daily load, showing up and just churning out consistent, reliable performance. Then you have the developer, the employee who's attending training, securing new qualifications, and getting highly visible to upper management. A massive fairness problem kicks in when an organization prizes the developer while totally overlooking the operator.
Listen to this quote for a second. I carry a larger workload and keep operations running, but another employee receives more recognition because they attended training or obtained another qualification. Man, if you have ever felt that specific frustration, you are not alone. It happens when your exceptional, daily effort is completely ignored just because the organization's standardized reward system is disconnected from what actually keeps the place running.
Let's move to Section 2, the development opportunity paradox, when hard work limits growth. Look, capacity development sounds fantastic on paper, but look at the very real hurdles these operators face. We're talking heavy workloads, strict operational deadlines, and inadequate staffing. Managers often can't even release them for an hour because their jobs require them to be on the floor. Add in potential language or tech barriers or schedules outside normal hours, and they're stuck. As a result, the organization accidentally ends up rewarding people who just happen to have lighter workloads or more flexible roles.
And that brings us to this massive paradox. The very employees who contribute the absolute most to the immediate survival of the company have the absolute least amount of time to prepare for their own future careers. Think about that. When promotions lean heavily on who attended what training session, leaders aren't necessarily rewarding motivation or potential. Honestly, they might just be rewarding free time. Crazy, right?
All right, Section 3, the psychology of fairness, translating the tension.
To understand why this inequality absolutely crushes morale, we need to dive into a little organizational psychology. First up is distributive justice. Basically, this is how we judge if outcomes are actually fair. It's the gut check of whether rewards, promotions, and workloads are distributed evenly. Because here's the thing, even if HR follows all the formal rules to the letter, employees are constantly side-eyeing the situation, evaluating if who gets what actually makes sense in the real world.
Then we've got procedural justice. Because it's not just about the final prize, right? People care deeply about how the game is played. Are the procedures for deciding who gets to go to training transparent? Are they consistent across the board? If management can't clearly explain exactly how they made these decisions, perceived justice tanks, which directly kills engagement.
This leads us perfectly into equity theory. Think of it like an internal scale. Employees are constantly weighing their contribution to reward ratio and then comparing it to the person sitting next to them. They put their inputs, like long hours, reliability, and problem solving on one side. On the other side, they weigh their returns, salary, recognition, promotions. If an operator realizes their ratio is way worse than a developer who just coasted into a new certificate, deep dissatisfaction is pretty much guaranteed.
We can also view this through the job demands resources model. Imagine the crushing weight of daily demands, tight deadlines, complex responsibilities, short staffing. Now try to balance that against the resources they're actually given, like training time, autonomy, support from their boss, or basic recognition. When employees face sky-high demands but are totally starved of resources, it is a fast track to pure exhaustion and severe burnout.
Which brings us to Section 4, the cost of broken trust, when the extra effort stops.
Check out this quote. The organization expects commitment from me, but it does not recognize my commitment. Ouch. This is a classic breach of what experts call the psychological contract. It's that unwritten expectation we all have that our loyalty and hard work will eventually be noticed and rewarded. When that unspoken promise is broken, trust is totally shattered.
and it honestly doesn't matter what your actual HR employment contract says.
Social exchange theory shows us exactly how this breakdown plays out in real time. Because employment, it's a two-way street. When your constant, heavy lifting goes totally unacknowledged, a predictable downward spiral kicks off. First, you stop giving that extra discretionary effort. No more staying late. Then, you resort to doing only the bare minimum requirements. Finally, there's a total loss of emotional commitment. When the relationship breaks, your absolute hardest workers will just quietly step back and stop caring.
Finally, Section 5. Balancing the Scales, a Framework for Recognition.
The good news, there is a clear way to fix this. We first have to acknowledge that just handing out promotions isn't enough, mostly because budgets are tight and vacancies are rare. An operator might be a superstar for years without a higher position actually opening up. So using non-financial recognition tools is an absolute must. We're talking time-off recognition, granting greater autonomy, a public shout-out from senior management, or even just a genuine written note of appreciation. These things pack a serious punch. But here's rule number 1. Organizations absolutely must create one unified, transparent framework for this recognition. This cannot, I repeat, cannot become a popularity contest. It has to be based on clear, documented criteria that applies fairly to everyone, whether they're an operator grinding it out daily or a developer learning new skills.
When we map all this out into a framework, the secret to retaining top talent becomes crystal clear. It starts with your inputs. You provide fair access to opportunities, you meaningfully recognize that daily operational grind, and you use totally transparent procedures. Do those 3 things and you instantly boost that feeling of organizational justice. And what does that output? Way higher motivation, killer engagement, and a deep, lasting commitment from your entire team. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a really hard look at your own workplace and ask yourself this. Does your organization reward potential over actual performance? Are the people keeping the lights on and ensuring the organization survives today getting the recognition they truly deserve for tomorrow? It is a tough question, but one every single leader needs to answer. Thanks for hanging out with me to explore this research, and here's to building fairer, better workplaces for everyone.